Hello and welcome to this special episode of GPCA Podcast. We are here today at the 18th Annual GPCA Forum, and we are delighted to be talking about our first ever launched initiative, the GPCA Startup Nexus. This initiative reflects our commitment to fostering innovation, promoting collaboration, and enabling the exchange of ideas between investors, startups, and key players in our industry. We have had two focus areas in this initiative where we talked about circular economy and climate action. Today, we are joined by Ross Baglin, the CEO of Interface Polymers. He is one of the top shortlisted companies for this initiative. Let me start by saying a big congratulations on being shortlisted for this initiative, Ross.
Thank you, Dima. It's great to be here.
Thank you for coming here. And we want to learn from you. What does that achievement mean to you?
To be selected for the GPCA, it was something we were immensely proud of. It's also important to us. A startup I worked for Shell for 25 years, and then I worked for a company called Infinium, which is a Shell ExxonMobil joint venture in the chemicals industry. You have enormous resources when you're in those kinds of companies. One of the great things very late in my career I wanted to do was to try, what's it like to build a business and to do a startup. And the thing you realize is you don't have the resources of cash or people. But one thing that particularly you don't have is brand recognition, name recognition, or a circle of contacts. And for us, this was such a fantastic opportunity to come as a very small company. We always say we're a small company with a big solution, but big solutions don't get you in the door. Things like the opportunity to present at the GPCA and to make contacts with people in this region is something that is invaluable to us, honestly. So we were delighted to be asked. You're always pleased when you enter anything to win and be selected, so that's always good. You start with that at 5 years old, and so it was. We were very pleased with that, and so for us, it's all good. It's all been a great investment.
Thank you, Ross. This is great to hear, and you just touched on the challenges already. But before we get to that, you mentioned about your small company, but with a big ambition and an amazing technology. So tell us about that. How is it going to help sustainability and circular economy?
Okay, so I have to probably first explain what our product is or what our invention is. So the invention that underlies Interface Polymers was invented in 2017 in the University of Warwick in the UK, in the middle of the UK. What it is, basically, it works with old plastics, polyethylene and polypropylene. These are about 60% of world plastics. So it deals with the old hands of the plastics industry. Those two plastics are unique in that they're what's called non-polar. They don't have, and I sometimes describe it for non-chemists as it's like they don't have any arms. They don't grab onto other things. So, and that's great if you're putting high density polyethylene in your milk bottle. That's great because it won't interact with your milk, and you don't want it to. The trouble is, there are some settings in which you really do want polyethylene or polypropylene, these incredibly common plastics, to interact with other materials. The biggest one of those is recycling. So when polyethylene or polypropylene are mixed with other plastics, most other plastics, they are like oil and water. So, if you put oil and water in a jar, it separates. It doesn't form together. So you can't use it. So when you put mixed plastics together of polyethylene or polypropylene with anything else, it forms a sludge. It's not anything you would ever want to use. So it all goes to landfill or incineration. Okay, that's the starting point. Our product is just like a detergent for oil and water, except it's for plastics. So if you put our what are called diblock copolymers into a mixed plastic stream, these will integrate very, very deeply. And something like polyethylene film, which is often mixed with polyamide or with other kinds of ethyl vinyl alcohol, other kinds of barrier materials in films. When that's melted down, it goes to landfill or incineration. If you put a few drops of our material in, it's just like a detergent in oil and water. You can form a new plastic and a new film out of it of the same quality as polyethylene. So it's a long story, but basically, in one sentence, it enables recycling of mixed plastics that can't be recycled today back into their original purpose. So,
wow, that I must say is very impressive, because this is one of the things that many people are talking about, mixed plastic. How are you going to use it to be able to recycle? And circular economy is a very important. But if you look at the entrepreneurship, as a role in that sort of industry, how challenging are you finding being an entrepreneur, to be in such a huge industry, very complex, right?
Yeah.
So
I was joking with one of our fellow startup founders. They do a digital business around the chemical industry, and 5 years after they started, they're profitable. Digital is super important, but it's a lot. I'm sure it's hard in its own way, but it's a lot easier than chemicals. Chemicals has enormous barriers to entry. And barriers to entry, as we know, are very expensive on both people and money. Those are the things you don't have as a startup. So if you look at our industry, our particular type of product, we need to make sure that the product is food approved, because it will go back into plastic film, which will be used with film wrap, with food wrapping. So you need to make sure there's no human toxicity of it. That sounds like a simple thing. That's $1 million right there. So then you've got to build your pilot plant. Then you've got to optimize your process. Now, again, I worked for Shell for many years. For Shell, it looks at those investments and says, "Oh, that's a lot of money to spend for a small little company with no sales until you pass through those barriers to entry." It requires immense confidence from your investors and great vision from your investors. We've been very lucky with that. We have Evonik, Ingevity, PTT Global Chemicals, and Bain Capital and Novapur in India as investors, and they've been far-sighted enough to say, this won't make money in the short term. We'll probably break through to profitability next year, but that will be 7 years after we started. So entrepreneurship in the industry, very tough, but you have some positives. You've got agility, speed, focus, purpose, and all of those things. And so that's the trade-off. I always say the companies that have all the money struggle with purpose and drive and focus, and the companies that have the purpose don't have the money, unfortunately.
Interesting insight. I was just going to ask about your technology readiness level. So we've got, I'd say it's a little bit hard to answer, because there are multiple products that so I've talked about the plastics recycling product. We have another product that's a TRL 8, and that's one that allows people to stick things, paint or glue to polypropylene. Polypropylene, again, doesn't have hands, doesn't like to hang on to paint or glue easily. We can fix that. That product, we have two products, that one and the recycling product that I talked about before. Yeah.
The paint, ink and glue product is TRL 8, so it's we've made our first sales of that, but it's quite early days of those sales. The recycling product is TRL 6-7 range, and it has been deployed with a development partner. We have a development partner in the UK called Flexipol, but we're at pilot plant stage for producing that, so it's not yet fully commercialized.
Amazing. But just let me follow on this point. It's very interesting to see this, between the two different products you have. But because you talked about recycling one, what are the key challenges you think? Is it the logistics, supply? Where do you find that?
For recycling?
Yeah.
A recycling product?
To get it.
It's the circular economy problem. As
the bigger one.
Yeah, it actually is the big issue. So I like to say, I don't think anything has ever succeeded in commercial life through pure altruism or appealing to people's desire to do good. There's a small group in the community who perhaps have the resources and they are wealthy enough to be able to spend money on feeling good. But for most people, budgets are hard pressed, things are tough. Products will get adopted and used and be successful when they save money or they make life easier. It's an old joke in a way, but cheap, fast, good. If you're not one, two, or it's almost impossible to be all three, but if you're not at least cheap, fast, or good, you're going to struggle to get adopted. So appealing to everybody's, don't you want to save the planet? Well, there's a small group of people who are wealthy enough and comfortable enough that they really do want to spend on that. But if you've got I spoke to my taxi driver this morning. He's got 7 children. He's working all day. He won't be able to worry about that. It's got to be cheaper, it's got to be faster, or it has to be better. We think our product in particular, it's cheaper. I mean, what we do is take material that's waste today, waste plastic. All you can do with it is burn it, or put it back in the ground. We can turn that back into a high value product. So that's circular economy. When we get it right, it's value creating for the planet, but it's also value creating for the consumer and for industry as a whole. And when that magic circle of taking rubbish and turning it into value works, that's good for the planet, but it's also going to be good for the investors, and that's what will make the wheel turn at the end of the day. So.
But building on this very amazing insights you shared on circular economy, how, from your perspective and how you see things now, how do you see the pace of advancing circular economy from your point of view?
It's clearly picking up. I mean, and it's interesting though. If you come to forums like GPCA or I was at the GC symposium in Bangkok a few months ago. Or the India Chemical Council symposium, I think at the end of last year. You go to those 3 and you just see the immense resources, ingenuity, energy, and effort that's being put into that. So I'm hugely confident that all the best brains in the world are working on this subject. That was not the case 10 years ago. There was a little bit of talk about it 10 years ago, but now there's immense, ingenuity, money, and belief, I think. People, we all use words. Words are easy, but belief and action are difficult. I often say that, and the circular economy is a couple of things. There's obviously the whole energy question, but the Earth also needs a materials revolution. We need an energy revolution, but we need a materials revolution. The Earth's finite. We've been using the bounty of the Earth, using its riches and throwing those in a hole for future generations to worry about, as though it will last forever. And I think we now realize that's not the case. So if you take plastics, 100 years of human ingenuity, an immense bounty from the Earth in the form of crude oil, which we've learned to exploit. We would be so silly as a species to lose the benefit of all of that and to turn what should be an enormous benefit into a burden. So the circular economy for me is all about that. How do we make things reusable, regenerative, everlasting if we can? Because that way, that ingenuity will finally, to me, have come home properly to the Earth. It hasn't, all that ingenuity and brain power hasn't been exploited to the max until we make it permanent. And I don't think it is permanent today. It's temporary.
Absolutely. I think it's now an urgency for us, for our planet to act upon and do something about. So, and you're right. I think from the GPCA perspective, circular economy, especially when it comes to plastics, has been our top priority since the past, I believe, since 2017-16. We've been very active talking about it, dedicating conferences about it, and we can see that it's working. But hopefully we're going to move from talks to really actual advancing that agenda.
And Dima, I think I really notice, Europe has been talking about this for quite a long time. Obviously Germany was in the vanguard of concern about environmental. They had green parties and things being elected. But for me, what's so encouraging is, every region around the world now gets this and is making it a centerpiece. Even regions that have a natural advantage or a lot of embedded investments in, the older styles of technology. Everybody realizes that we've all got to make the change. We've all got to make the transition. And there's an opportunity in it, and everybody sees it.
And definitely, we hope that your company will have also a great opportunity in our region. I hope you tell us, how did you find the annual forum? What was your impression? If you can give us some thoughts about it.
Yeah, Annual Forum has been fantastic. Most of the time, as a small startup, I have to admit I've been at my stand. And we were going to be two of us, but unfortunately, the younger face of our outfit, who's a good deal younger than I am, like 40 years. He got COVID the day before we came, so my hope to go and sit in the plenary forum and understand more has been a bit more restricted than I hoped. But it's still been, for me, I have to say, a great education in the way that the legacy of this industry in the Gulf region, the names, the stories, the incredible nation-building work that's gone on, to me, is it honors not only this industry but the countries here, and from that point of view, it's an ornament, I think, to the whole region. The way that the GPCA happens and the way it moves from place to place it represents, I think, the immense cooperation and collaboration. There's a lot of problems in the world with politics, but when you see people working together on commerce and on trade, and you just see how much we all have in common, I think this stuff is where humanity's at its best, if I'm honest.
Thank you so much, Ross. It's been really a delight having you today, and allow me to close now and to say just a few words here to our listeners. I really want to thank you, whether you were watching or listening. Please stay tuned for more insights from the GPCA podcast. Thank you.